We're going to get started. We're going to get started in approximately 5 minutes. So please stay on the line, and I'm happy to see so many names joining us today. So we will get started in approximately 5 minutes. Thank you. My name is Jessica Gorham, and I'm the Regional Emergency GBV Advisor based in sunny Nairobi. I'm happy to be able to say it is sunny today. And I'm happy that we're also seeing so many names and places on the line. Today is an informational meeting about a really exciting academic initiative that the GBV AOR, which is the Area of Responsibility, which is the global coordination mechanism for gender-based violence in emergencies, has partnered with, obviously, UNFPA, since we're one and the same in a way. And we have partnered with the University of Nairobi to develop a postgraduate diploma in gender-based violence in emergencies. So just a couple of ground rules before we start. The meeting will take place for approximately 1 hour. If you could please make sure that you are mute, that you put yourself on mute throughout my presentation. You'll have lots of time at the end to ask any questions that you might have. Also, if you could do a kindness by making sure that your video is off. We have people calling in from lots of different locations with different bandwidth, and this will ensure that everybody can, hopefully, enjoy the presentation today without too many challenges. And this is also, I think, one of the foundations for our course as well, is to make sure that it's accessible to people working in really hard to reach areas and low resource areas. So if we could maintain those two rules, I would appreciate it. If you have any specific questions throughout the presentation, please do think about putting those in the chat. And my colleague, Ruth Mataya, who I will introduce in a minute, will be monitoring the chat. So she will be writing down all of your questions and grouping them together. So if throughout the presentation you have a specific question you want to write down, we do have Ruth who will be monitoring the chat, and she will mark it down, and we can make sure that either myself or some of our other colleagues can answer those at the end during the question and answer period. So thank you again for joining us, and I think we'll get started. We are also, I want to say, supported today by our colleague in Geneva, Shiva. We're always happy to see you on the line, Shiva, for helping us. And she will be also managing some of the admin and logistics today. So thank you, Shiva. And I think we can go to the next slide. So just a quick overview of the agenda. We already did a couple welcomes and introductions. We're going to give you an overview of the course. We're going to go into the background. What are some of the entry criteria? What are some of the subjects that we will cover in the course? The duration, the mode of study. This one's a big one. Program cost and payment modes. I had many of you write to me separately asking about this, and so we will be very transparent. And then we're going to also obviously promote a little bit why we think this course is so unique. And then we'll give you some information on how to apply. Next slide, please. So some introductions. As I mentioned, my name is Jessica, and I recognize a lot of people on the line, your names, and I'm happy to see you here today. And those who have been in other venues and forums with me know that I've been talking about this initiative for the past few years, and I'm really happy that we're at the stage, the launch phase of it. I'm also really pleased to introduce, as I mentioned, my colleague Ruth, who is the project coordinator. She works with me here at the GBV AOR, or Area of Responsibility. And perhaps most importantly, I'm really pleased to introduce Dr. Charles Olunga. who is the focal point and really the founding member of this initiative, and we'll hear more from him during the question and answer period. Dr. Olunga is a professor in the Department of Anthropology, Gender, and African Studies at the University of Nairobi. And I just want to say a big thank you to Dr. Olunga, because it was really his vision and a lot of his work that got this off the ground and to where we are today. So really happy to see Dr. Olunga on the line as well. Next slide, please. So I thought it would be interesting to give a bit of a timeline and why we're anchored at the University of Nairobi. This has been a really long partnership that we have had with what used to be the Institute of Gender, African Anthropology, and African Studies, and it has since been elevated into a department. So we started, the GBV AOR started our partnership with the University of Nairobi back in 2015. And we first launched a 2-week short course at the University of Nairobi. And that initiative included a successful internship component as well. And what we really, some of the strengths we think of that 2-week program is it really enabled us over the years to understand where the gaps were in learning. It was geared towards graduate students who were coming out of the gender department or the gender program at the University of Nairobi. And one key aspect of that 2-week short course was it was also, we really highlighted experiential learning. So we would do lectures in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we would go out into the field to really reinforce what we learned in the classroom. So for instance, if we were looking at the health response, we would go to the hospital that actually did clinical management of rape here in Nairobi. And we're really pleased to say that we've had hundreds of students who went through those 2-week short course, and 15 of those who also went through our successful internship component are now actually working as GBV specialists throughout the region internationally. So something else, another learning that came out of that was many of the students, I should say the overwhelming majority of the students, said it was just too short. So that's what really gave us sort of the impetus and energy to think about how can we make this more sustainable and make sure that all of these learning competencies, that we can manage them. And that brings us to 2020, where the GBV AOR partnered with UNFPA. And that's interesting because the UNFPA and the GBV AOR are one and the same in a way. The GBV AOR is the global coordination mechanism for GBV and emergencies, and we are led by UNFPA. So Ruth and I are based at UNFPA, but work on the GBV coordination portfolio. And of course, we partnered with the University of Nairobi to develop the first ever postgraduate diploma in gender-based violence in emergencies. And I would be very remiss if I did not thank our donor for this initiative, which is the Swiss Development Corporation, or SDC, who really paved the way for us to get this initiative off the ground. So after 2020, when all partners had made an investment in this, we contracted sector experts to develop the content for each of the course modules. And that took us, as you can imagine, through COVID. There were lots of up and downs during that time period. But I think the most important landmark is this one. Here in 2022, we are very pleased to say that we are now launching the postgraduate diploma, and we are accepting applications, and which is why I'm really pleased to see all of you on the line to learn more about this initiative. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background on how we came to this point. So we know from this region, as I mentioned, the GBV AOR coordinates GBV prevention and response activities throughout the world. So we have a unique view of what some of the challenges are. And what we realized is that the United Nations and NGOs often struggle to recruit qualified GBV specialists, which leave critical gaps in coordination and implementation in emergency settings. So a lot of times we are pulling from gender specialists, we might be pulling from more generalists that don't have the specific technical capacities that are needed to work in emergencies or understand the unique environments and programming requirements and coordination requirements in Uganda, or excuse me, in emergencies. So this course, and this was sort of the foundation that we went in with, and we thought we need a more sustainable way to get more practitioners out into the field. So this course specifically targets practitioners currently working in the field of GBV, prevention and response, and those with a relevant background who wish to transition into this type of humanitarian work. And I'll go into, on the criteria page, what we actually mean by relevant background. And then our goal simply is to increase the number of GBV specialists working in humanitarian contexts and to ensure that those who work in the field have advanced knowledge of global standards. This is about building a community. As I said, I recognize so many names that are online today, and I'm so happy to see you because you know that when we look at gender-based violence in emergencies and the work that we do, it's super stressful. It requires a lot of technical capacity. And it also, I think we can only manage and survive if we are doing that within a larger community. And so this course is also part of building up this community. And that's why, again, I'm so happy to see all of you here. Next slide, please. So how did we go about understanding or developing the content, or looking at what should be prioritized over, what subjects should be prioritized over, say, another subject? Well, we did a study, this was a while ago, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. The global GBV AOR completed a year-long study that identified the professional competencies that a GBV specialist should embody. So we did a broad review of TORs, we did focus group discussions, we did key informant interviews over a wide range. And Sarah Martin, who many of you might know, did that study on our behalf. And what we found is there were some key core professional competencies that every GBV specialist, and in a way coordinators as well, should know in order for them to do their job in a way that's safe, and also so that they can promote and then reinforce good practice. I talk about professional competencies, but I think if you are interested in this course, that there are some key core competencies that we can't teach. Those core competencies are things like human rights. You have to believe in your heart that women, men, boys, and girls have the right to be safe in their homes and in their communities, free of violence. I can't teach you that. That's something that you genuinely have to believe and have a passion for. I can't teach you that all people, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of their religion, their race, their gender, how they identify, have a right. It is their human right to be able to access services and to live in communities free of discrimination or any other forms of abuse. If you do not have those core, what we call those core competencies, then this probably isn't the program for you. We can teach you professional competencies, but what we can't teach you is some of those core ones, those belief systems that you have to just innately believe that we all are a party to. So just keep that in mind as we go through this afternoon and as you plan for your future. Those are things we can't teach you, but are core to the work that we do. So we had, as many of you might know, I also co-chair the regional GBV working group for East and Southern Africa. We wanted to make sure that also all of our member organizations had a say in how this was developed. So we did form a strategic advisory group made up of multiple local organizations, international organizations, and representatives from the UN, as well as from academia, who are part of that strategic advisory group. And so they were really the sort of provided some oversight on how we progressed in terms of development. Once we identified through, again, the study, we had some consultations. We also had a retreat where we finalized really the course content. And then we contracted sector experts to develop that content. And this is also really important. All of what we will present, or all of the material and content in the postgraduate diploma course, is based on global guidelines that have been developed by partners on behalf of the GBV AOR. So really it's about promoting good practice, so that if you are sent to a rural posting in Bentiu in South Sudan, you will have the confidence to go forward with your programming or your coordination. If you have a question or a concern, you will know where. If you don't know the answer, at least you'll know where to get the answer, or else you'll also have a community around you where you could reach out as well. That's the goal. And that's super exciting to me. Next slide, please. So course entry criteria. This is a postgraduate diploma course. So we do require that holders of a bachelor's or advanced degree apply. Of course, we will prioritize those who have a social science background. We love social workers. I can't say enough about you. I am a social worker by trade. Also have a background in health. So we love nurses as well. If you're in legal aid, if you're in gender, psychology, we would love to have lawyers and nurses and psychologists and psychosocial support workers and social workers who have a more general understanding. Join us in this adventure that's coming, this academic adventure, so that then you'll have the criteria, the specific knowledge on GBV in emergencies. And of course, your previous academic work has to be from a university that is recognized by the University of Nairobi. The reason that we partner and continue to partner with the University of Nairobi is because it is well respected on the entire continent. As you know, it's ranked globally, but it's also ranked as one of the top universities in Africa. We also feel like, and we'll go into the tuition, and we feel like it's accessible, to be honest. And also, we think that Nairobi itself is a humanitarian hub, so that those that might not have the experience in the field could perhaps have opportunities through some of the organizations that are based here in Nairobi. And that brings me to my second point, which you could also be a holder of a bachelor degree with significant work experience in gender-based violence in emergencies. But I would encourage all individuals to apply, particularly if you have that passion, if you want to promote those core competencies of human rights, the survivor-centered approach to gender-based violence prevention and response. If those are at your center, if those are at your core, then I do really think you should apply, because those are kind of some of the best competencies that we can have. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at some of those course modules. So the course will be approximately 1 year, and that is 3 terms. That's if you are a full-time student. We do have 4 core modules. So regardless of your background, you are required to take these 4 units. The first one is the feminist approach and principles to gender-based violence in emergencies. So it really looks at the foundation of the work that we do. The second one is coordination of GBV interventions in emergencies. We think this is also a core competency. The third is case management, because that is many times the center of all of the work we do in terms of, if we're referring to different types of services, it's often the center or the first point of referral. And then this last one I've highlighted in purple because you might take that in term 2, which is research and data collection methodology. And you'll see that the third term is a research project. So we feel that it's important to have this as well as a core module. So in February, we launch in February, those first 3, since this is our first launching of the course, our first term would be those first 3 courses. And then research and data collection methodology you might take during your second term. I'm trying to put it in a framework that makes sense, particularly for those of us on the line who might not know the British system. I'm from the US, so it's taken me a little bit of time to really understand the nuances. We do a two semester year, and then you can see this is a little bit different for some. Others might say this is so obvious. So I just want you to see that 1 module equals 1 unit. And then we have a bunch of electives that you might want to take based on where you think your future and career could lie. Coordination and others, you'll get a broad view of some of these, but to go really in depth, you would have to take the course itself. And then for our third term is our research project. This is the equivalent of 2 course units, and it can complement existing professional work that you're doing. That's the dream, really. So just to summarize, you must complete a minimum of 8 units to graduate. So 4 of those units will be those core modules, and then you can select 2 electives based on what you perceive as maybe the direction or your own professional motivation or direction. I'm just going to leave this up for just a couple of seconds so you can just kind of look it over. Case management, law and human rights, gender transformative approaches to prevention. And we're specific in using gender transformative approaches because we wanted to see change. GBV risk mitigation in emergencies, psychosocial support and empowerment. So what do we mean by empowerment? So this elective encompasses psychosocial support and what that means in an emergency setting. So we go over things like, what is a women and girls safe space? What are the guidelines and the criteria for those? What kind of activities would you have in those to promote empowerment? So not just about psychosocial support, for instance, what we see in the pyramid, for instance, right? One-on-one counseling or one-on-one support, but also about empowerment. What are appropriate income generating activities? How do you even identify those? GBV and emergencies in healthcare, as I mentioned, that is often the first point of referral for survivors of violence. And then, as I mentioned, the research project. Okay, how about our next slide, please? So mode of study. I think this is what's really exciting. we recognize that if we want to attract, as we said, our target participants, which are those who are working in the field already, or those who want to transition, then we need to make sure that it's accessible. And we might even have some diverse learners on the line who might need more time to look at information rather than just sitting in front of a computer for 3 hours. This initiative is fully online and it is asynchronous, which means that you do not have to link in at a certain time each week. You will have lectures that you are expected to download at some point in the week and complete, but it is self-paced. So if you know you are in a low or a resource in a setting that doesn't have strong internet, you might want to wait until Monday night. Download all your materials, work on it during the week, and then upload if there are any assignments or other things that you would need to do. So the online assignments and examinations. And then generally, we will also have live facilitated discussion forums with lecturers and students. So if you are able to join, you would, and these will either, I mean, these are at the discretion of the lecturer, but usually happen about once a week. And it's your choice. I think this is also a great time to, if you have questions or concerns, or if you wanted to ask about something even in your own work that's coming up related to the course or to the module, these will be recorded, so you can access them if you are unable to join the live discussion. The course duration. For full-time students, it's approximately 1 academic year, which is equal to 3 terms. As we said, it's 8 units. 4 of those units will be your core modules. 2 of those will be electives. That brings us to 6. And then 2 of those will be your research project. Research project is mandatory. This is also for all of us to start thinking and to bring us to a higher level of thought and learning about GBV and emergencies. If you'd like, that's the minimum. I just saw a comment. Can we take more than 1? For sure. We've got a lot of great electives, so I'm happy to see people already saying, yes, those look really interesting. Can we have more than just 1? This is all in English. I should say this as well. We are hoping as a GBV AOR that soon we will be able to roll this out in other regions, in other languages. But this, at this stage right now, the course is in English. The lecturers will also be communicating in English. So the first cohort, as I said, again, super excited about this because we've been working on it for quite some time. The first cohort will start in February of 2023. And this is the terms for the University of Nairobi. So it is University of Nairobi. You apply to the University of Nairobi and it coincides with their term dates. So if you would like to apply for the February, we're taking admissions, we're taking applications now for the February admissions. Next slide, please. This is what everybody's been waiting for. So what is the program cost and mode of payment? Again, we want to be 100% transparent. This is in line with the University of Nairobi. They set the tuition rates. We do not. So for Kenyan citizens, for the 3 terms, for the entire course, it's approximately 256,000 Kenya shillings. For foreign students, those who are not Kenyan citizens, it's approximately, and this is based on the current exchange rate. So the dollar is really strong right now. So this is actually a really good time to sign up and join us in this venture. It's approximately $2,700, 2,700 US dollars for the entire course. $2,700, you complete your 8 units, and you graduate from the University of Nairobi with a postgraduate diploma in gender-based violence and emergencies. Now, I know many of you are saying that's still a lot of money, Jessica. I know it is. But I want us to think, if you have attended a training or a workshop in the past year, and just think about the organizations. If many of you are associated with organizations, just think about how much per person it takes to attend just a 3-day training. I see many of you are from South Sudan. So many of you are traveling from the States into Juba. Imagine. That cost of that workshop would be much more than $2,700. I really encourage you to apply. And I would encourage you to reach out to your organizations. Be your own best advocates here. If they say, we're going to have this big training, I know that we have workshops in South Sudan that sometimes cost up to $50,000 because of logistics and other things. Just think about if we translated that money for a whole year's worth of study, and at the end of it, you can get a postgraduate diploma rather than attending a 5-day training. Yeah, and I see you're still saying, what about still those of us who cannot afford? I do encourage you to apply. We're fortunate to have a project coordinator. This is kind of a pilot cohort going forward, but we are fortunate that part of her role moving forward is to look at scholarship opportunities within our own organizations and also within our member organizations. As I mentioned, UNFPA, as the lead of the GBV AOR, we represent, over 50 member organizations, including the UN, UN Women, UNFPA, UNICEF, UNHCR, and many others, along with some of these big INGOs. So you need to advocate at country level, and we will continue to advocate at regional and global level for this as well. So you can advance pay, and you need to have your payments in by the 5th term of the week, or by the 5th term week, which would be if February, it'd be around the first week of March. But I can say that installment payments are possible, but they are subject by the faculty dean to approval by the faculty dean. So you can either pay by shilling or dollar. That's up to you. It's a personal choice. If you have access to shillings, you might choose to do that, or you might want to pay in dollars. And I see there are questions in the chat, and we will get to those questions. I know that Ruth is marking them down, and we have Dr. Olunga on the line, who has many years experience with the university. As I said, he's our focal point and really the lead of this from the university side. And then modes of payment. You can do a direct bank deposit. You can do an electronic transfer, mobile money transfer for those who are in Kenya. You are probably quite familiar with this. You can do credit or debit cards.
So on one hand,
and then you can also do bank checks. And I just want to come back to, I know that cost it sits on us, and I know that. but also we were looking at other universities, and there was a, we piloted, or we first started this initiative, and Dr. Olunga is on the line and can attest to this. We looked at University College Dublin, for instance. We thought, oh, that would be a great university that the University of Nairobi and GBVAOR UNFPA could partner with. But the tuition was so exorbitant. It just really did not make it accessible really to anyone outside of really Europe. And so this is why, again, we think it's a good initiative here based at the University of Nairobi. And in a way, I know it might not seem cost effective, but when you look at other universities, both in the region and then also globally, that has the same standing as the University of Nairobi does, I think it's good money for value. Next slide, please. Which brings us to now. So please do apply for the February term. You can apply via the online portal. If you have any additional questions after this presentation, you can contact our colleague and hopefully soon to be your friend, Ruth, and her email address is here. And again, I know that many people, I see comments around the cost. This is the cost. The University of Nairobi is the one that dictates cost. That's not on our side. It's really the standard for the University of Nairobi. So whether you're applying for a postgraduate diploma course in another sector or another department, it's universal. So this isn't out of our control really. But I do really encourage you to apply. Because as I said, we're working out, maybe if you have to defer to another term, we are looking at other opportunities. Okay, next slide, please. Questions. Great, I've been seeing a very active chat. So I will now, I can answer questions, but I also want to give an opportunity to Ruth and Dr. Olunga to maybe take the questions portion. And so we'll start with Ruth. If we get through all of these questions, then we will open it up to a general plenary questions. So Ruth and Dr. Olunga, Ruth, maybe you can share some of the questions. And then Dr. Olunga, if you want to take some, and if others, if I can happen to answer, I will, but I think probably Dr. Olunga can also. Okay, over to you, Ruth. Ruth, over to you. I don't know if others are hearing.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, Ruth,
yes,
are you?
We're here, Jessica. Maybe just waiting for.
All right, and I'm still going to ask if everyone could keep on mute except for Ruth. Ruth, are you hearing us?
Yes, I can hear you, Jessica.
Great.
And
go ahead with some of the questions. Yes, I can hear you well.
Yes, I said indeed it's a very active audience. Thank you, everyone. And I will pose some questions. Amira asks, I did applied linguistic, but worked in as a social work in Libya. Can it be possible to fit in the criteria? Then Florence asks, can one write a thesis after the postgraduate and attain a master in arts? Then Harriet is asking, I was wondering if the 2-week short course and internship is still available in case one cannot afford the postgraduate diploma. Then Winfred asks, can I apply if I have no bachelor's degree, but I have extensive work in both theory and practice in gender-based violence? Fred Nero asks, can you please avail the
Ruth, maybe if we, sorry, Ruth,
to know if mine is on the list? Can I post there and allow Professor Olunga to check on some? Yes.
Yep. And if you, Ruth, could maybe put questions together so that we don't have, yeah. Okay, over to you, Dr. Olunga.
Thank you, Jessica. I think so far, most of the questions, as I was looking at them in the charts and as put across by Ruth, anybody with a degree in applied linguistics is eligible, meaning that this is a postgraduate diploma. So the presumption here is already you have a degree. And I know that Jessica did mention certain areas. It's our hope that, of course, once you have the interest and you have a degree in applied linguistics and you are able to cope, I think you are eligible. However, the fellow probably without the undergraduate degree, it may be a bit challenging. I think we are still a little more conservative with respect to admission. And I think anybody, I think any degree, whether you are a first class holder, second class honors, upper division, lower division, or even a pass, as long as you have that degree and you have that work experience, you are eligible for admission. Thesis, of course, the danger of thesis is that it's also ordinarily a thesis within the university context is slightly more rigorous academically than a project. And therefore the thesis, since the project is just a 2-unit course, we have decided to, majorly to do a project within the context of postgraduate diploma. Thesis normally happens a lot of time within either the postgraduate in a master's level or PhD. But on this one, we have suggested that you have simply a 2-unit project that is then based on your area of interest. And area of interest here would mean if you're coming from a legal perspective, you're coming from a medical perspective, you're coming from social work, anthropology, sociology, so you are concerned or gender perspective, so you could then write a paper or rather a project that then gives you more emphasis to put more energy, more intellectual ingredient and ability to think more widely within your area of domain. And therefore, that's the essence of the project. I think, Jessica, so far the questions that already have been asked are those ones that I've attempted to answer. Back to you, Ruth.
Thank you. And Professor Olunga, there are further questions, and one is on whether the project is mandatory and whether one can select more than 2 electives. Please go on.
Yes, from the perspective of the University of Nairobi, for you to be a postgraduate diploma holder, the project is, yes, mandatory. But remember, the project is written under the guidance of your supervisor. You'll be allocated a supervisor who can then direct you and guide you in the process of writing. Our assumption is that you're now at that level. You could also be able to write proposals for funding from the organizations where you work, and therefore writing that proposal gives you the leeway and ability to be able to, to strengthen your ability in that area. So the project is literally mandatory.
Thank you. The next questions, maybe I'll let you, Jessica, respond to. The question about the 2-week course, whether it's still available, and there are still some queries on scholarship and whether one can get bad scholarship. Thank you. Over.
Thanks, Ruth. The 2-week short course, we are not currently running that one. It was an in-person course. And so since COVID, we haven't restarted it. And Dr. Olunga and I, we could definitely think about doing that. But really, we've put a lot of our emotional and also, professional sort of into developing the full year course. And yep, I did see a lot of questions around the cost. And it's true. I can't minimize it or say that it doesn't exist, because it does. And it is a tuition-based course, postgraduate diploma course through the University of Nairobi. As I mentioned, though, if you are working for an organization, you can be your best advocates. I would really, really want you to go to your supervisors and your managers to see if this is a possibility. I would again really encourage you to apply, because as you are working personally to look for funding, we longer term will also be looking for opportunities. We don't have those in place. So the short answer is, at this point in time, there is not a solid scholarship scheme available. But we are also reaching out now to partners and others to try and get that in the future. Yeah, so I see people are still asking those same questions. That is. And as I mentioned, there is an installment option that would have to be cleared through the university, as mentioned. Yeah, and I think that's mine. Over to you, Grace, or Ruth.
Thank you. There's also some query on whether East African nationals are foreigners. Can I let you, Professor Lunga, to answer that?
Well, under the circumstances, the word here is not foreigner. As long as there is any agreement within the university, this will be found out once you made an application. I think there are those who are covered within the fees category. So I think that is something that we can find out. I am not privy to the details at the moment, but we have a lot of East African students at the moment at the university. I also seen somebody asking a question whether you can take more than 2 electives. The answer is yes, because you do realize that the compulsory units are only 4, and then you have to do a certain number of units, which is more than 4. So yes, you'll be able to take more than 2 electives, as it were. Back to you, Ruth.
Thank you. We also have a question here on that the program is of similar cost to the Master of Gender. Why do we prioritize this? Probably, Jessica, you would want to take on that.
Yeah, I mean, this course is very specific to those who are interested in working specifically in the field of gender-based violence prevention and response, either programming or coordination. And so it's a very different initiative than, say, gender. Gender is a more, yeah, it's just different, really. The courses that are offered through this postgraduate diploma course are not offered in the gender course. You might have, I think within the gender department there, or the master's in gender, there is one on gender violence, maybe a couple, and they're broad. This really gets you into specifics and really primes you to work in this field in terms of becoming either a specialist, a program coordinator, or a GBV coordinator. Yeah.
Jessica, the real answer to that question is that the person asking that question probably is not privy to the changes that have really occurred. And if you look at maybe those are people who studied the gender in the years gone, there has been some kind of revision upward in the fees, even in the gender. So this course is slightly less expensive than the gender masters in gender. If you check, it has been sort of like looked at from the diploma level, the postgraduate diploma level, other than the master's and PhD level. So if you check pretty well, the other cost now is slightly more.
Thank you. There are also questions about whether this course will be online or there will be physical classes. And just to reiterate that this is a fully online course. There's also a question on whether there's a deadline to the admissions, and the admissions, the portal is open and is actually open throughout the year, and admissions are done on a rolling basis. So if you're interested in the February 2023 intake, please apply. And of course, after that, we shall have future intakes. Yeah, there's a question here. Any courses Sorry, there's a question whether if one is a holder of a diploma or certificate and is interested in this course, can they be accepted, Professor?
I think I'd answered that question earlier. I did say that these are postgraduate diploma. It means that all applicants should at least have the basic degree.
Okay,
Then there is one question, Jessica, I would allow you to take it on. Any courses on GBV high and people with disabilities, especially women and girls, as well on men and boys and then GBV prevention of emergencies? This is from Nugus.
Yes. So when we talk about gender transformative approaches to prevention, we do look at the role of men and boys. In terms of intersectionality, and I know that someone did ask about disabilities, intersectionality is really inserted throughout. And if you do become a student, I really highly recommend that you also make it a priority during discussions and others, so that it will always be a focus throughout conversations.
Thank you. There's also questions on whether the fee is paid once or in installments. And I will say, as it was said, that the fee is payable per semester. You can either pay in advance the whole amount or pay by the 50th week of each semester. So the $2,700 is not paid at once. You can decide to pay that in the 3 semesters.
But it would have to be pre-approved.
Yes,
is my understanding. I see we also have someone's hand raised. Hussein, I see you have your hand raised. If you want to unmute, Faisal.
Yes, madam. My name is Faisal Moulid. I'm working NCA, Somalia. How can I participate or join this university while I'm not having the ID of Kenya, or I'm the foreigner? So can you give me the guidance and how to do this?
Hi, Faisal. Yeah, you would just need to apply to the university via the link that we provided. So it's really designed exactly for people like you, Faisal, for people who might be working in other environments, not necessarily Nairobi. Really, you do not have to be based in Nairobi. It's really for people within the region. We tried again, it's asynchronous, which means that if you are not privy to an internet connection, a strong interconnection consistently, that you can go to one place, download, work on your work, and then upload again. So we did try to make it as accessible as possible in that way. So we again encourage you to apply. I keep putting the link here in the chat box. But if you would like this presentation and a recording of this meeting, you can find it on our global website, which is gbvaor.net. And I'm happy we have Shiva on the line. You can access this presentation and the recording on our website, which is gbvaor.net. I see another question by William. William, go ahead.
Yes, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity. I am William from South Sudan. So I was just wondering, I know that the course will be online. I don't know for graduation and also receiving the certificates. So in case one completes the course all and is due for graduation, how will it be? Will the person come physically to Nairobi to be graduated, or it will be done just virtually online? And again, about the diploma, how will it be? Will it be sent to different countries where the students will be, or people have to travel to Nairobi to get their diplomas? So this is what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Maybe Dr. Olunga, you could speak to that one. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think number one, there's always room for graduation in absentia, and therefore one can finish the course without necessarily stepping into Nairobi. You could also then want to do graduation. In this case, therefore, you must then do application to come for the graduation when it's due once you have completed the course. So these are options that exist, and that in terms of the fully online process, that you can also will be meeting with whoever will supervise you online. But with respect to graduation, you have a choice of either coming physically or then still graduating in absentia and having your certificate mailed, whichever way is most appropriate.
And Ruth, I think we have time for one more question. And I see that Dr. Omer Abkar, you have your hand up. We'll take that as the last question.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask about exemptions. For example, we do have colleagues like who are medical doctor and they have long career on the GBV in emergency, more than let's say 13 or 14 years, and still they're interested to take this course because I mean it will complement other areas that they don't have like strong abilities or competence on it. So will be they exempted, for example, if he's a medical doctor or she's a medical doctor with long experience on health and clinical management of it, it will be exempted from the course related to host response, or he should do also the course? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Omer. This one is an elective, so I would suggest that you don't choose that one, that you choose another elective. If you have a competency already, say if you're a lawyer who's been working in the field of GBV, probably better not to, I mean, you could, and then be the smarty, the smarty person in the class. But yeah, if you've already worked in that field, that would be my recommendation.
Once again, Jessica, my experience over the years in academic world is that even those who come to us, medical doctors, lawyers, to do specific courses, and you realize the degree to which even related courses to what they did and what they practice daily, there's still something to learn. Number two, exemptions in academic parlance exist on the basis of a similar course taken at similar level, probably with almost similar content. A lot of times, again, practical experience in the field do not constitute grounds for academic exemptions. But I think I like your answer. You can then choose any other elective that probably gives you leverage in terms of a multidisciplinary approach and knowledge in a diverse field within the course.
Dr. Olunga, any last reflections or thoughts?
First of all, I want to thank you very much for organizing this webinar. It has been an eye-opener. I did count up to, we had almost 246 participants on board. And I think you've been able to reach a cross-section of the audience. And then the application is ongoing. It's by rolling basis. I've seen somebody asking whether the portal talks about September. We are simply saying that applications are by rolling basis. So once you apply and you are admitted, then of course the course as of now begins in February. As to whether the application, yes, there's an application fee that of course you will see as you make application within the university portal. You will reach somewhere where you'll be asked to show whether you have paid some fee for processing purposes as a matter of, I think, matter of policy within the university. So far, so good on my side, Jessica. I don't think I have much to say, just to thank you for this initiative.
Thanks, Dr. Olunga. And just before we finish, just to reiterate that the PowerPoint presentation and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to our global website, which is gbvaor.net. And Shiva has graciously said that she will also share it, that she will share it with all of the participants via email. I noticed that some of you had very specific questions. I know one had said that you have graduated, you haven't gotten your results yet. Others had very specific questions that might not have been relevant to the rest of the group. We're not ignoring or minimizing your question, but I do really encourage you to reach out to Ruth with those specific questions. And Ruth, can you put your email in the chat again? So I see, Telly, you're saying, hey, you didn't answer my question. It's because that we had some very specific questions that we would have to maybe communicate with you directly. So please do reach out to Ruth. Her email is her last name at unfba.org. Ruth is based at the University of Nairobi, so she'll be able to answer those questions and liaise with Dr. Olunga and other relevant departments to find you the answer. We have all of your email addresses because when you registered, you had to give the email addresses. So we have those. So as we mentioned, all of these materials will be sent to the email address that you used when you registered. Ruth's email is, and maybe Shiva, can you go to the slide before this one? You can see that Ruth's email is on this slide on the bottom here. And then also the link to the application site is on this slide. And if you have any specific questions, please do reach out to Ruth and she can help you find the answer. So thank you all very much for joining us. And I hope to see you. You'll hear my voice a lot more because I'm 100% invested in making sure that this postgraduate diploma in gender-based violence and emergencies is a success. And I'm happy to be joined by Dr. Olunga and Ruth, and we're all on the same team, and we'd love to welcome you as part of our community and hopefully see you in February. Thanks, everybody. And have a great afternoon. It was good to see you all online and all your great questions. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.